Marvel, Hela's husband breaks the universe. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 101, Hela's compensation, the angel of heaven descends, part 1. Not only Nick Fury couldn't call the shots for cooperating with Hydra, but he also didn't dare to call the shots. As for destroying the Hydra, Nick Fury didn't have the guts. Today's Hydra was no longer the Hydra without a backing in the plot. They had embraced Asgard's thigh. If someone really wanted to do something about Hydra, they must consider Asgard's reaction. This kind of thing was super troublesome and could easily offend people. Nick Fury immediately threw the pot. He reported the matter directly to the higher-ups of mankind and let them have a headache. Nick Fury only needed to wait for orders. Looking at Nick Fury's ugly look, Pierce was very happy. Comfortable, this was probably his most comfortable day after becoming a Hydra. Before, he never imagined that he could one day call out, "Long live the Hydra," in front of Nick Fury. And even if Nick Fury knew that he was Hydra, he couldn't do anything to him. This feeling of having a backer was really cool. As for Nick Fury, he was naturally depressed. How did the immortal Hydra get involved with Hela? Thinking of that powerful god queen, Nick Fury's face paled a bit, and he panicked. He was almost killed by Hela at the beginning, and he really didn't want to experience that again. Nick Fury and Pierce didn't have to wait too long. Soon, the higher-ups of mankind gave orders. After reading the orders of the higher-ups of mankind, Nick Fury took a deep breath, resisted the urge to shoot Pierce, and stood up to shake hands with Pierce. "I just received a message that there is no Hydra inside S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. is still the same S.H.I.E.L.D. and nothing has changed. I hope we can sincerely cooperate in the future to maintain the order of the Earth and protect the Earth from external threats." Nick Fury's face was ugly, but he also knew that the higher-ups of mankind had no choice. They couldn't really turn against Asgard. So they could only endure the inner helplessness and choose to cooperate with Hydra. Besides, as far as higher-ups of mankind were concerned, whether Hydra or S.H.I.E.L.D., they were all just tools. The meaning of tools was not to have their own ideas. As long as Hydra didn't make a big mess, just let it do whatever it wanted. Pierce had obviously expected this result. With a victorious smile on his face, he shook Nick Fury's hand. "This time, I won, and I hope we will work hard together in the future. I think both you and Asgard want to see a stable Earth." The smile on Pierce's face made Nick Fury want to punch him. But in the end, Nick Fury could only leave with a black face. Damn Hydra, damn Asgard, damn SHIAHM, never mind. But Nick Fury didn't get discouraged either. Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. had been infiltrated, he still had other cards that he could use. How could there be only one S.H.I.E.L.D. department under the dignified king of agents? It was just that S.H.I.E.L.D. would inevitably decline in his heart later, something that could not be avoided. Fortunately, the Avengers were still under him, and he still held a trump card in his hand. Naturally, Yibai would not know about the confrontation between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. Even if he knew it, he wouldn't take it to heart. Since having a strong power, the pattern of Yibai was undoubtedly much larger. The power struggle on the Earth was after all just a game between human beings. The real strong would not just focus on the Earth. After staying with Hela in Asgard for a while, Yibai and Hela returned to Earth once again. It was still the same matter and still the familiar dark cuisine. The good news was that Hela's cooking had improved a lot. At least now it was not too much torture for Yibai. In addition, Hela also knew about Yibai's pain. Although she hadn't given up yet and still brought Yibai some torture dark dishes every day. But fortunately, every time after torturing Yibai, Hela would always compensate Yibai in her own way. Maybe it was because they had been together for a long time, and day by day, Hela had gotten bolder. In the past, whenever Yibai wanted to play some new tricks, Hela would stare at Yibai with murderous eyes to dispel Yibai's evil thoughts. But now, Hela did not refuse Yibai's new tricks, and sometimes took the initiative to cooperate. For example, wearing some nice stockings, such as changing into a special costume, or a shy posture. With Hela's physique and flexibility, there was no problem at any angle, and she could perfectly meet Yibai's needs. It was like a mystery box, which brought Yibai a whole new feeling every time. In the kitchen of the manor, on the sofa, on the balcony, in the pool, everywhere Yibai and Hela were sweating together. So Yibai now looked forward to Hela's dark dishes every day. It did not matter whether he was compensated or not. What mattered was that Yibai wanted to see how much Hela's cooking had improved. Yes, that's all. Yibai was Hela's husband, and Hela would satisfy his willfulness. You should know that even in front of Frigga, Hela was cold. It was not that Hela and Frigga had a bad relationship, but Hela herself had this kind of personality. Only Yibai could let Hela completely relax and show herself blatantly. In addition to enjoying his daily life with Hela, Yibai also did not forget to observe what was happening in the outside world. Although Yibai wouldn't make a move, it was not bad for him to look at it for fun. It was also a joy of life. It was worth mentioning that the little spider, the boy next door loved by everyone, had made his debut. Now in New York City, you could often see little Spider-Man swinging on the buildings. Of course, some unlucky people were caught by Spider-Man. In addition, most of the news was negative, such as where crime had occurred and which new criminals had been born. It had to be said that the crime rate in the Marvel world was really exaggerated, and ordinary people were really no different from living in hell. The fragmentation of social value, combined with the threat of alien invasion, made the underclass very turbulent. Many criminals didn't want to take this path at all, but they were forced to do so. This also led to the rampant of various religions in the United States, confusion of beliefs, and the emergence of all kinds of gods. The more turbulent the society, the more fertile the soil of religion, which was a truth in any age. If you don't believe it, you can look back at history. Basically, there were always large religions in the last years of the dynasty. As one of the mainstream churches in the United States, the Christian church would not sit idly by and watch this happen. The more churches were born in the United States, the greater the impact it had on Christian religion. In order to save their believers, the recent movement of the Christian church was not small. Some priests even declared on the news that they had received God's will and heard God's voice. According to the priest, God was very dissatisfied with the current human world. Nowadays, human crime was rampant and humans were sinful. So God had decided to save mankind and restore his glory on earth. Soon, God would show miracles in the world, and great angels would descend again. Episode 102, Hela's Compensation, The Angel of Heaven Descends, Part 2. For this kind of news, there was naturally a lot of scolding. No one believed that God really existed, nor did the so-called miracle actually happen. Even the most devoted believers of God believed that the priest was crazy and should be sent to Arkham Mental Hospital. But what everyone in the world didn't expect was that the angel of God really came. Vatican City, Papal States. Tens of thousands of God believers gathered in the largest square, and they prayed with devotion. Because just one day ago, a holy light suddenly appeared in the sky above the Vatican City. Just as the legendary gates of heaven were about to open, along with the appearance of holy light, there were bursts of holy sound from heaven. This phenomenon immediately caused shock all over the world. As one of the mainstream faiths on earth today, the followers of the Christian church were counted in the billions. God knew how many followers of the Christian church had rushed to the Papal States overnight, hoping to be the first to hear the holy voice of God. Today's Papal State was almost being broadcast live all over the world. The same was true for Yibai. He also sat on the sofa with Hela and watched the miracle happen above Vatican City. However, unlike those who believed in God like ordinary people, Yibai and Hela clearly knew what the so-called God was. God really existed. Yibai had confirmed this from Hela's mouth. God had been on earth since the ancient times before human civilization developed. And he created the current dominant church on earth, the Christian church. But later, there was a fierce contradiction between God's heaven and Asgard. When Odin could not bear it, he sealed God together with heaven. In fact, strictly speaking, heaven, where God was located, was by itself a dimension attached to the world tree, the same as the 9 realms. At the earliest, it should be the 10 realms. It was after only Odin sealed the heavenly realm, the 10 realms became the 9 realms that everyone knew today. So, because of Odin's death, Odin's seal also gradually disappeared, and God came back with his heaven, right? Yibai asked Hela and got a positive answer from Hela. Not only heaven, but also many strong enemies who have been sealed by Odin, and they are all coming back soon. Hela added to Yibai that she had already known this result. This was also the reason why Odin chose to hand over the throne of the Asgard to Hela in the end. If Asgard's heir was not strong enough, then Asgard would definitely be in a desperate situation after his death. Compared with Hela, Thor's strength was still not enough. Then heaven and God, aren't they our enemies? Yibai pondered thoughtfully. Because heaven was sealed by Odin. It was difficult to say whether it would be hostile to Asgard. With the relationship between Yibai and Hela, if Asgard was really in danger, Yibai would not hesitate to take action. Who knows, I'm not interested in making trouble with those bird people, anyway. Hela replied indifferently. She was also infected by Yibai and had now fallen in love with the life of fishing. Basically, as long as anybody didn't take the initiative to provoke Asgard, Asgard won't be stupid enough to find trouble with others. Same went for heaven, as long as they didn't take the initiative to provoke Asgard, Asgard would not take action against them. As for whether heaven could really forget past grievances, no one could say anything. During the chat between Yibai and Hela, the holy light over the Papal States gradually changed. The white holy light, which was already very obvious, had now soared to a blinding level. However, such a strong light did not make people feel uncomfortable, instead everyone felt that it was very gentle. This strange phenomenon naturally led many people to wonder whether it was really a miracle. Even some onlookers who did not believe in Christian religion whispered to themselves at this time. After that, the so-called voice of heaven slowly fell from the sky and spread into everyone's ears. This made the believers of Christian religion more and more firm, shouting that they heard the holy voice of God. Then, a white door appeared from the sky, and it became more and more obvious. At this moment, even people who did not believe in the so-called God opened their mouths in shock. The materialism in their hearts began to waver. Could it really be God's coming? The legendary gates of heaven appeared and the Nordic Protos came to the earth. It seemed that there was nothing unreasonable about having another God. And the believers of God all over the world went crazy when they saw this scene. They said Amen regardless of occasion or location, just like being possessed. Under the gaze of people all over the world, the gate of heaven opened slowly. Then a female angel with 4 wings flew out from the door. The angel had a mask on her face, only a white chin was exposed, and her whole body gave a very holy feeling. Seeing this scene, no matter how firm materialism was, the whole world's view was severely shaken. Even the angel had appeared, who would dare to say that God was false? As for those believers of Christian religion, all of them had become crazy at the moment. They shouted Amen enthusiastically and worshipped in the direction of the Vatican City of Papal State. Not to mention the believers of Christian religion, even many people who did not believe in Christian religion could not help following them at the moment. When faith became a reality, its impact was immeasurable. Looking at the exaggerated appearance of the angel, Hela bit her lips in disdain. Even though it's just a 4-winged angel, what an exaggerated appearance. Even God had been sealed by Asgard, that angel really had guts. However, the angel's method was really good. It used both the holy light and the gate of heaven. In terms of appearance alone, Asgard was certainly more than a little weaker. Asgard always liked to be simple and rough. Their previous arrival in the Battle of New York City was only through the Rainbow Bridge. Although it was shocking, the shock was temporary, and it was difficult to impress people. Perhaps Asgard could also learn a lesson and exaggerate its appearance in the future. At the same time, over the Papal States, the angel who had descended spoke. Your world is full of flowers of sins, and the world is sinking in darkness and fire. By the will of God, I will purify the sins of the world and lead people to good. The good can go to heaven and the evil will go to hell forever. The sound was not loud, but it spread to the whole world through the reporters. Episode 103, The Angels Plan to Destroy the World, Humanity Will Offer War, Part 1. It could be foreseen that the arrival of the angels would certainly bring a great impact on this world. Good thing, this was the Marvel world where powerful people emerged endlessly, otherwise heaven could easily rule the earth. In addition, Asgard had descended on the earth before, which could be regarded as a vaccination for the humans on the earth. It let humanity know that the so-called gods, like them, were just life. The only difference was that the world in which the gods lived was on an alien planet. In the minds of most human beings, whether heaven or Asgard, they were just aliens that once appeared on the earth. This also reduced the impact of the angels' arrival, so that the entire world would not fall into a frenzy. There were even some conspiracy theories that were popular and thought that the arrival of angels may pose a great threat to humanity. At any age, there was a market for such conspiracy theories. However, the impact was still great, especially among the believers of Christian religion. Those crazy believers of Christian religion almost went crazy after the angel really came. They shouted Amen all day, with a pious attitude as if they were possessed. There was no doubt that as long as the angels started a holy war, those people would immediately become warriors. They would obey God's orders and destroy all heresies. Nick Fury was also deeply troubled by this. Angels had made the already chaotic earth more chaotic. The most important thing was the attitude of heaven. What exactly was it? If it was the same as Asgard, it was okay. Although Asgard was domineering, it intervened very little in the affairs of the earth. But heaven was different. They had a lot of dark history. Inevitably, the God in heaven would have a hot mind and would want to rerule the belief of humanity and return humanity to the era of divine monarchy. If that was the case, the earth would really be in chaos. As Nick Fury, whose mission was to protect the earth, he was really worried at this moment. He was thinking, what could he do to create checks and balances on the angels so that the heavenly people could settle down on earth? Inexplicably, Nick Fury thought of a sentence, use myths to deal with myths. When he realized this, Nick Fury suddenly brightened up. Yes, the angels that had descended on earth from heaven were not the only ones. There was also Asgard, wasn't there? Asgard was the lord of the 9 realms, and the earth was also one of the 9 realms. Now that heaven had sent angels to descend on the earth, Asgard had to take care of it. If humans could win Asgard's support, they might be able to balance heaven and angels. Nick Fury thought this method was feasible and planned to talk to Thor, who was from Asgard. Besides Nick Fury's worries about the arrival of the angel, there were also others who were also full of hostility towards the arrival of the angel. Tony was one of them. As a reliable materialist warrior and technology maniac, Tony didn't believe in the so-called God at all. Even Asgard, in his opinion, was just a civilization with more advanced technology. Thor of Asgard was his friend, and Asgard did not interfere too much with things on Earth, so Tony was not hostile to Asgard. But angels were different. These guys had been good at playing with people since ancient times. Moreover, the posture of the angel coming before made it clear that it was to buy people's hearts. If it wasn't trying to do something, Tony wouldn't believe it. Jarvis, study this descending angel. Maybe I will need a suit of armor that can counter the angel. Tony told Jarvis that it's always right to plan ahead. Moreover, Tony had a hunch that the angels must have plans for the Earth, and there might be large-scale conflicts in the future. If he did not prepare now, it might be too late when the time comes. In addition, Tony also had another idea in his heart. Maybe the Earth needs a patron saint. What Tony didn't know was that his idea would cause great trouble later. As Nick Fury and Tony thought, the coming of the angels brought not good intentions, but ambition. In the Papal States, in the largest church, the angel was listening to the Pope's report with a proud face. After listening to the situation in today's world, the angel was obviously angry. The glory of God has been gone for so long that the pagans have taken over the world. In that case, purify it. This terminally ill world can only be reborn in destruction. This is a new revelation. The angel's tone was bitter, but the believers around were very excited. Faith had completely brainwashed them, without realizing that the purification said by angels was not a friendly word. In the records of Christian religion, when God was dissatisfied with human greed and sins, he decided to purify the world. Thus came the Great Flood. The Great Flood killed almost all of humanity, and only a man named Noah escaped in a ship. After that, Noah established a new world, but forgot the other humans who died in the flood. This was the real revelation and God's consistent practice. Since God was not satisfied with this world, he would destroy the world and then rebuild it. As for whether humanity would be able to rebuild a new world, what did that have to do with God? Lord Angel, the diplomat from the United States, is here to visit. Would you like to meet him? Just when the angel was thinking of completely purifying this new world that had forgotten the glory of God, at that time a believer came running in from outside. A diplomat? Let him in. The angel said faintly. She was reluctant to meet the diplomat. Perhaps under her own influence, the human beings in this world would become the Lamb of God again? Soon, an old man in a suit and meticulous silver hair walked into the church. After seeing the angel whose body was surrounded by holy light, his eyes clearly flashed with shock. However, he was an experienced diplomat and soon suppressed his inner shock. It's nice to meet you, the great angel. I am a diplomat of the United States. My name is John. I have come to visit and see your miracles. The diplomat named John said respectfully, with a very low posture. However, the angel snorted coldly after giving him a cold look. United States, isn't it a hypocritical country that forgets the glory of God and advertises freedom? Haha. State your purpose, sinner. The reason John was called a sinner was because the angel failed to see the devotion to God in his eyes. For angels, if they were not pious enough to God, they were sinners. John was an old diplomat. He would not get angry easily unless he couldn't help it. At this time, when he heard the angel say he was a sinner, he was also a little angry deep inside. Ah, Birdman really thought he was a god. It's just an alien. Episode 104, The Angel's Plan to Destroy the World, Humanity Will Offer War, Part 2. It could be seen that John was a firm materialist. However, although he thought so, John didn't express it at all. He was still respectful and with a low posture he answered, Our country admires the glory of God very much. May the glory of the Lord be with us. The purpose of this visit is to ask you, Lord Angel, to pay more attention to your influence and try not to incite the believers to do something irrational. In return, we, the United States nation, will vigorously promote the glory of God, so that God's churches can be found in any area of the United States. John explained his intention. He hoped that the angels and the guy in heaven could pay a little attention to their impact on earth. It was not that they were not allowed to see the believers, but he hoped they would not provoke the believers to do something extreme. For example, cleaning up heretics. When faith was above morality, it would become a terrible thing. Humph, do you want to use the shackles of mortals to bind us, the great angels? No way. As for the rewards of the United States, every inch of this world belongs to God. And it is God who gave you this land and let you live. You are just lambs. As for the believers of God, they will naturally listen to God's arrangement. The best punishment for those heretics who do not believe in God is to let them fall into hell. The angel remained arrogant and did not take John's message to heart. As for the so-called morality, did angels need humans to teach them how to do things? After hearing the angel's answer, the diplomat named John was obviously stunned, and then his anger began to get out of control. He was really angry. This damned angel was clearly a demon. But he still held his temper and patiently explained. Lord Angel, depriving others of their lives without authorization is a violation of human rights and an insult to human dignity. I wish the angels would treat humans with a little more respect instead of treating them like livestock. I believe God feels the same way. John said that because the protection of human rights was the basic bottom line of human morality. Even the United States must respect human rights. Human beings were by no means lambs. This was what the President of the United States said to him. Even if human beings had all kinds of civil strife, safeguarding human dignity was what any country should do. Even the United States with a bad reputation would insist on safeguarding human dignity. Because they were all human beings. However, after hearing John's words, the angel's eyes became completely cold and terrible. She began to regret why she had to say so much to a heretic. God thinks so too? Do you know God better than I do? The nonsense of a sinner makes me lose my patience. Servants of God, drag him outside to the square and purify his fallen soul with fire. The angel was too lazy to argue with John and ordered the Pope directly. The so-called purification was actually nothing but burning with fire. After hearing the angel's order, the Pope and others were stunned. Although they were crazy about faith, they still had the concept of human rights in their hearts. But this hesitation only lasted for a moment, and soon they followed the angel's instructions and dragged John, the heretic, outside to the square. When angels descended on the earth, the so-called human rights were just a joke. They preferred to believe in their own beliefs and believed that they would go to heaven after death. John was shocked at this. He didn't expect that he would be burned to death. He was a diplomat, so he came here alone. But when he was really put on the square, tied to a pillar and poured with gasoline, he realized that all this was true. Are you guys crazy? She's not an angel at all, she's a demon. She is trampling on human dignity. She is wantonly killing human life. Are you going to be her accomplice? Are you still human? John shouted to the believers, hoping to stop their behavior. It's a pity that his cries didn't work at all. When faith was above morality, everyone was in the most terrible danger. And the scene of John shouting at the believers happened to be filmed by news reporters outside the square. Everyone looked at him suspiciously and didn't understand what was going on. John realized that he could not convince those crazy believers and turned his eyes to the journalists. He began to shout loudly, hoping to be rescued. Hey, journalists all over the world, I'm John. I'm a diplomat of the United States. These believers are crazy. They are going to burn me, just because I want angels to not trample on human dignity. That thing is not an angel at all. It's a devil in the appearance of an angel. It's the most terrible devil. John's cry spread far away, but no one came to rescue him. Those journalists, on the contrary, loyal to the camera in their hands, projected the scene of his shouting to the world. Then, in front of everyone, John was set on fire. Because his whole body was drenched with gasoline, John was immediately wrapped in fire. This terrible scene caused an uproar all over the world. Nick Fury in his own office hammered the table in front of him. Although he didn't know John, he was also a human, and he felt the same. John's experience made Nick Fury realize that angels and the heaven behind them were the enemies of humanity. You bird, you will experience the wrath of humanity. Nick Fury said with hatred. Even if his heart was cold, it was ignited by anger at the moment. Right now he could not calm down at all, and all he wanted to do now was to rush to the Papal States and tear that damn angel apart. Damn, they were treating humans like livestock. It was not just Nick Fury, it was the same with Tony, he was also furious now. If that's an angel, then I'm going to send her to hell. Tony said firmly to Jarvis, then put on his Mark armor directly and flew off in the direction of the Papal States. He was violent and arrogant. He really didn't put the so-called angel in his eyes. Nick Fury and Tony's reaction was just the beginning. In fact, when this news was broadcasted to the world, all human beings were in an uproar. The bloody reality told humanity that what angels brought was not hope, but dark slavery and trampling. What kind of bullshit angel was this? Go back to your God. Humanity would not be reduced to a lamb, instead they would only offer war. At this moment, all humans were enraged by the arrogance of the angels. Episode 105, Hela kills angels in seconds and washes heaven with blood while talking and laughing, Part 1. In the seaside manor, Yibai was also watching the news. Even Yibai had become a little angry when he saw that the diplomat named John was burned to death in broad daylight. Just because he was salty and enjoyed spending time with Hela didn't mean he wouldn't get angry. Hela also obviously felt Yibai's emotions, so she came over and gave Yibai a peck on the cheek as a comfort. Do you know anything about God? Yibai suddenly asked Hela and asked about something. Yes, Odin once told me. God is a strong man, and even Odin may not be a match for him. Hela didn't hide it and replied to Yibai. After hearing Hela's words, Yibai was also a little surprised. He didn't expect God to be so strong. If God is stronger than Odin, then why was heaven sealed by Odin instead? Yes, this was a problem. Odin sealed heaven, not by his own strength, but by using the greatest treasure of Asgard's immortal palace, the immortal palace stone. If there was no immortal palace stone, Odin might have been defeated by God long ago. And God was only sealed, not killed by Odin. Doesn't this still explain his strength? Hela explained the whole story. This was a secret Yibai really didn't know. At the same time, Yibai also knew in his heart that no wonder this angel was so arrogant. God's ability was strong, and he was also very talented. And for Asgard, God was definitely a very formidable opponent. Now Asgard had not only lost Odin but also the immortal palace stone. Whether someone could defeat God again was still unknown. However, after thinking that Hela now had 3 infinity stones in her hands, Yibai was much more at ease. Hela plus 3 infinity stones. Even if Odin was resurrected, he would be hung up and hammered. There was no doubt about it. It was no wonder that Hela was so calm, without the slightest sense of nervousness about the arrival of a great enemy. Only if you were confident enough in your own strength, you could sit back and relax. But this time, Yibai didn't plan to let Hela solve it by herself. God of heaven, huh? He hoped that the old man could be more calm, otherwise if he really wanted to play Revelation again, Yibai would definitely kill him. Although Yibai's strength was very strong, he still felt that he was a human in his heart. When human dignity was insulted, it seemed to Yibai that his dignity had been insulted. If that so-called God really intended to exterminate the humans, Yibai guaranteed that he would be the first to kill him. As if feeling Yibai's thoughts, Hela held Yibai's hand and pulled it in her palm. I'll join you when you're ready. I'll help you out. It had to be said that Hela was now more and more able to please Yibai. In the Papal States, the burnt and blackened body of John was still tied to the pillar. Around the square, reporters were completely dumbfounded. Those crazy believers, as if they had won victory, chanted prayers around John's body, and praised the glory of God. This was a very strange scene, which made all humans in the world uncomfortable. But at this moment, a figure quickly flew into the sky. Soon, the figure landed in the middle of the square. The visitor was none other than Iron Man. Angels, bullshit angels. Looking at the scorched remnant of John, Tony said angrily. His words made all humanity feel dark and cool. However, it made the surrounding believers angry. Bastard, you should go to hell. Damn heretics, let's burn him too. Burn him, the majesty of the Lord Angel cannot be dishonored. God will approve of us. The glory of the Lord is with us. The words of those crazy believers made Tony's eyes cold. He didn't expect these believers to be so crazy as human beings. Could they trample on human dignity and kill human lives for the so-called glory of God? Today it was John. Who was it going to be tomorrow? Was it necessary to burn all human beings who did not believe in God? Just as Tony was getting angry, the angel finally came out of the church. She still looked like she had just arrived, wearing battle armor all over her body, with a mask that covered half of her face. The body still emitted a holy glow, and a golden divine ring was suspended above her head. However, in Tony's eyes, the angel at this time was no different from the devil. Another heretic. Do you think you can rebel against the glory of our Lord with these lumps of iron? The angel looked at Iron Man and said arrogantly. She didn't pay attention to Iron Man at all. In her eyes, he was only a heretic. The glory of God? Bullshit, if he appeared in front of me, I would absolutely blast him with a cannon. What makes a god who does not respect human dignity worthy of human respect? Tony's words were very rude and made the angels murderous. It seems that the glory of God has been lost in this land for too long. Even the old lambs dare to resist their master. But it's good, in that case, let's just burn them all. For the land of God, it was enough if only God's servants lived here. As for other heretics, let the divine fire send them all to hell. Once God rained a great flood and cleansed a group of heretics, and now it was just a matter of doing it again. Thinking of this, the angel had no intention of continuing to talk with Tony. She only needed to burn the heretic in front of her. So, in front of everyone, the angel slowly flew into the air. In a burst of white light, a long white sword appeared in her hand. Sinner! The wrath of the Lord will judge you. While speaking, she pointed the sword in her hand at Tony, and then sprayed a hot pillar of fire from the tip of the sword. As soon as Tony saw this, his pupils shrank, but he quickly reacted and took off in the air to avoid the fire. As for the pillar of fire, after falling to the ground, it immediately spread in all directions. Those crazy believers who had just surrounded Tony and planned to burn Tony to worship the heaven were wrapped in flames. They were completely burned in seconds. Watching this scene, Tony's inner anger grew stronger. That's how you treat God's servants? Tony questioned the angel. The angel snorted coldly and didn't reply. Because she really didn't take those mad believers who died seriously. The servants of God were actually submissive lambs. Since it was a lamb, it should naturally be handled at will. God would receive their souls, and they would return to heaven and live a good and happy life. Although there had never been a mortal soul in heaven, the flames could not put Tony to an end, so the angel decided to do it himself. She increased her speed, almost turned into a white light and flew towards Tony. Tony's eyes were also very dignified. Although he was arrogant in front of the angel, he was really not sure about defeating her in his heart. Right now, Tony was thinking that it would be great if he could inject Extremis virus. If there was an Extremis virus, he would surely be able to defeat this arrogant angel. Episode 106, Hela kills angels in seconds and washes heaven with blood while talking and laughing, Part 2. As for now, he could only grit his teeth and fight. Despite all the thinking, it actually took just a moment. Almost in the blink of an eye, the angel arrived in front of Tony's body. The long sword in her hand, with a sound of breaking through the air, slashed towards Tony's neck. Obviously, the angel wanted to cut off Tony's head with a sword. However, Tony reacted quickly, and he shot the angel in front of him. The angel, who was caught off guard, was immediately hit by a palm cannon, and her body was repelled quite a bit. However, the power of the palm cannon was not enough to hurt the angel. Instead, it made the angel more and more angry. Damn sinner, go to hell. The angel seemed to feel that Her Majesty had been dishonored and then rushed towards Tony again after screaming. The long sword in her hand sliced through the air with a terrifyingly cold light. Tony didn't dare to get carried away and shot several small, concentrated missiles directly. The angel, who clearly had little defense against technological weapons, was once again hit. In a violent explosion, the angel's body was swallowed by fire. Then the angel fell straight down from the sky in front of the whole world. Angel, defeated by a mortal. After seeing this scene, most people around the world were excited. So what about angels? Wouldn't they still lose in front of humans? If the God of Heaven also regarded humanity as a lamb, humanity would pull God down from the altar with war. In addition, there were also a few people who were heartbroken watching the falling angel. Most of these were crazy believers of Christian religion. For example, in front of the Stark Tower in New York City, some priests from New York City gathered and planned to tear down the Stark Tower. In the eyes of the crazy believers, Tony actually dared to attack the angel, which was blaspheming the glory of God. Tony should go to hell for this, and Tony's Stark group should also go bankrupt. Human beings were always contradictory. When the forest was big, there were all kinds of birds. For example, before Yi-Bai crossed to the Marvel world, the motherland was so strong. Weren't there still many people who could not stand up when they knelt down? Back on Tony's side, he didn't let his guard down because he knew that missiles alone would not defeat the angel. Sure enough, the angel who had fallen from the sky before flew up again. But now she looked a little embarrassed. The two pairs of white wings behind her also became scorched, and even armor was a little tattered. However, the anger in her eyes almost turned into substance. Tony clearly saw anger in her eyes through the two holes in her mask. Oops. Tony said unpleasantly. While the words had not yet fallen, the angel once again rushed towards Tony. This time she was 3 times faster than before, and Tony only had time to raise the palm of his hand and fire the palm cannon. But it was dodged by the angel, who was already alert by twisting around. Then Tony was struck by the long sword in the angel's hand, and his body flew backwards. After stopping in the air, Tony didn't have time to check the damage as the angel's attack came again. Once, twice, 10 times, 20 times. The long sword in the angel's hand kept slashing on Tony's steel suit, which created a lot of sparks. Tony was also under constant blows, and his mood gradually became heavier. Back armor penetrated, danger. Power unit destroyed, danger. Weapon system destroyed, danger. Leg armor penetrated, danger. In Jarvis's warning, Tony's steel suit was directly cut through by the angry angel. Then, the angel finally stopped her attack. Tony also fell directly from the air and landed on the square. At this time, Tony couldn't even move because the power system was destroyed. Right now, human beings all over the world were worried about Tony's life safety. Tony himself was the same because he saw the angel leaning over with a long sword. Wicked sinner, die. The angel raised the long sword in her hand without hesitation and was about to stab him. Just then, a black light came from the sky. Before this angel could even react, it knocked this angel out. The black light flew all the way to the top of the church and nailed the angel at the top of the church. Now everyone could see clearly that the angel's abdomen had been pierced by a black long sword. At this moment, the world was in an uproar that the angel had actually fallen. In the manner, Hela looked at Yi-Bai invitingly, and "Come and praise me" was written all over her face. Yi-Bai was not stingy, he ruthlessly nibbled on Hela's delicate face. Well done, it felt good to watch. Yibai said to Hela, making Hela smile. Just now, when Tony was about to die under the angel's sword, Hela summoned her own sword of the night sky and threw it in the direction of the Papal States. This sword of the night sky arrived at the Papal States at an incredible speed, and under the eyes of everyone, it nailed the angel to the church. And Hela did all this for the sole purpose of relieving Yibai of his anger. Hela could see that Yibai hated the angel very much. Since Yibai hated her, the angel should go to hell. This was Hela's idea. As for saving Tony, it was only incidental. I don't know how heaven will react when it finds out that this angel is dead. If they really intend to destroy the world and lead humans to extinction, will you destroy heaven with me? Yibai took Hela's hand and asked her. His tone of voice was usual, as if he was asking Hela what she would like to eat this evening. Of course, it is the duty of the God Queen to vent her anger. Hela also agreed with a smile, without paying any attention to heaven. While the world was speculating about what existence was out to kill the angel, they didn't know that the couple was flirting. But Nick Fury recognized the sword of the night sky. When Hela first found him, he was almost killed by this sword of the night sky. Naturally, he had a deep memory. Sometimes he often even had nightmares. Now that Hela killed the angel, Nick Fury's first thought was that Hela did this to relieve her anger. Nick Fury had some opinions on Asgard before and felt that Asgard was too domineering. But now, Nick Fury suddenly realized that Asgard was simply too good. Compared with the angels of heaven, Asgard was like a charity. Episode 107, The Horn of Destruction Blows, and the Heavenly Fire Descends, Part 1. In the 10th realm beyond the 9 realms, heaven. God sat on his throne and listened to the reports of the servants below. The angel Gabriel, who was in charge of observing the world and conveying the will of God, came out from the crowd and stood before God. Great Lord, I have just received word that the angel Rolf, who went to earth through the gates of heaven, has been killed in battle. It was Hela, the queen of Asgard, who killed her. After Gabriel finished speaking, all the angels present became angry. They actually killed an angel on earth, which was a blasphemy against God. In addition, Asgard actually made a move, and those war lunatics didn't pay much attention to their heaven. Michael, the archangel in charge of the war, also stood up and said to God, My Lord, let's start a holy war. We have been away from the earth for so long that the Lamb has forgotten the glory of the Lord and has been bewitched by the demons of Asgard. We should start a holy war to purify all the deceived lambs. Only the servants of the Lord can live in the land of the Lord. As a famous war madman in heaven, Michael was extremely keen on starting wars. After hearing that the glory of God had been blasphemed in the world, his first thought was to launch a holy war against Asgard. At the same time, it was time to cleanse the earth. How dare you forget the glory of our Lord and not present yourself as the Lamb of God, let's destroy them. The angels did not object to Michael's proposal. Their thoughts were the same as that of Michael. Since the world no longer believed in the glory of the Lord, there was no need for these human beings to continue to exist. Another disaster, like a great flood, would easily clean up all the filth and sinners in the world. Then they could choose some faithful servants of God to become the new Noah and recreate the world. As for Asgard, that arrogant country, naturally, it must also be crushed. Now that Odin was dead, many angels in heaven didn't think Asgard could stop them. Perhaps, the glory of the Lord could also be spread to Asgard, turning all Asgardians into the Lamb of God. God's look remained unchanged. He quietly looked at the angels below. Just as the angels were speculating that maybe God would reject them, he finally spoke. Just as you wish, Michael. Start a holy war against Asgard and spread my glory to that land. As for sinners on earth, Gabriel, blow the horn of destruction, and the holy fire will purify all sins on earth. God said faintly and assigned the work to the angels in the blink of an eye. The meaning of God was also very obvious. They were going to take back everything that had been lost through war. Heaven had left the 9 realms for too long, and they needed to regain the glory they once had. Whether it was in Asgard or on earth, it was the same. Holy war and extermination were undoubtedly the most effective means. Although doing so meant the death of countless lives, the Lord didn't care. In God's view, lives that did not believe in himself had no value, and destruction was their only end. On earth, human beings did not know that the terrible disaster of extinction was coming. The media all over the world was discussing what happened in the Papal State at this time. An angel from heaven was nailed to death in the church in full view of the public. This event brought too much impact on humanity. The first was the attitude of the angel towards humans, which was also a topic most discussed by humans today. Angels, who used to symbolize beauty in mythology, were now revealing their demonic side. They trampled on human dignity and insulted human morality. All this made humans very angry. Through the development of society, the concept of equality for all people was deeply rooted, and everyone had the right to pursue freedom. The days of being treated like a lamb of God were long gone. In this case, you could imagine how angry humans would be at what that angel did. Today the whole world was caught up in a wave of opposition to angels and to God. Churches around the world have been damaged to varying degrees, and everyone was proud to desecrate the Christian church. In addition to the extreme anti-angelists, there were also the crazy believers of Christian religion. They firmly believed in their faith and were willing to become the lambs of God. They were God's servants on earth and would protect everything God had on earth. Naturally, there had been a violent conflict between these two kinds of people. Killing and violence were taking place anywhere in the world. The already extremely high crime rate had soared to a frightening level. Of course, in addition to these two extreme groups, ordinary people were still worried. Those ordinary people were even more worried about whether there would be another invasion like the Chitauri army. Many experts had already said in the news that the Great Flood in the Bible was likely to come again. God was likely to cleanse the sins of the world again. This argument was supported by many people because there was a precedent for it. While all mankind was worried and fearful of the possible catastrophe, Nick Fury was very busy. He just went to a regular meeting with the leaders of the military. The United States had begun to prepare for the war and was ready for the possible world destruction disaster at any time. As for Nick Fury, he also began to recruit more superheroes to join the Avengers. If heaven really came and launched an extinction disaster, the superheroes of the Avengers were definitely an important force. If that couple is willing to make a move, things will be much simpler. Thinking of a certain terrifying god on the earth, Nick Fury sighed and said. Of course, he didn't dare to disturb the couple, otherwise the consequences might be worse than the arrival of heaven. I hope the world can be peaceful. Nick Fury sighed helplessly. He wondered what was wrong with the world, which was getting more chaotic every day. So much so that he was starting to miss the old days a bit. The biggest threat back then were some terrorists, and the biggest thing that was done was just a plane crashing into a building. Unlike now, with the invasion of the Chitauri army and Asgard, even heaven had come out. In the face of these races from outside the earth, Nick Fury always felt powerless from the bottom of his heart. Today's human beings were like babies still in their cradles. When facing those already adult alien civilizations, they really had no resistance at all. All he could do now was pray that the terrible disaster of destruction would not happen. According to Murphy's Law, the more you were worried about something, the more likely it was to happen. This time, it was the same. At a time when all humanity was worried about whether God would relaunch a large-scale destruction of the world, the destruction of the world really came. This time, the destruction of the world was not a great flood, because the flood could no longer purify the sins of this world. This time, the destruction of the world was the heavenly fire representing the holy judgment. Episode 108, The Horn of Destruction Blows, and the Heavenly Fire Descends, Part 2. The time was late at night, when most humans were asleep. In the dark sky, a fireball with a long tail flame passed through the Earth's atmosphere and hit the ground. And this was just the beginning, because more and more fireballs appeared, filling the sky, like a meteorite rain hitting the Earth. This scene immediately plunged the whole world into panic. People seemed to have gone back 65 million years ago, back to the eve of the destruction of the dinosaurs. And this time, the target of extinction turned out to be humans. Just as those fireballs were about to reach the ground, the military of each country opened fire. In the United States, the major military bases had already entered the stage of war preparation, and now they were fully ready. Countless missiles rose into the air and intercepted those fireballs. Missiles and various laser weapons had intercepted many fireballs in advance before they had a chance to land on the ground. So people could see that all the fireballs exploded in the air. During the night, it seems that there were countless fireworks blooming, which was especially beautiful. But behind this beauty was the danger of extinction. Among the intercepted fireballs, an angel with a weapon appeared. These angels were the real judges. Sin needs to be purified, and the earth only needs lambs. A group of angels shouted slogans and flew towards the nearby cities. Almost every angel would choose to descend to a city and then start killing mercilessly. Of course, for these angels, they were not killing people, but doing holy purification. They came with the orders of God to purify the earth from sin. It was a massacre, and the angels didn't care whether the target was old or young, unarmed or not. As long as it was a human being in their eyes, they would not let it go. The wickedness of these angels naturally invited the rebellion of humanity. One superhero went out and killed the angels. Iron Man Tony Stark, who had improved his new armor and injected himself with the Extremis virus, had a huge increase in strength. At this time, he was flying over the United States at a very fast speed. He rushed to cities one after another to eliminate the evil angels. Hulk was also running on the earth, shuttling from one city to another. Thor, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Mutant X-Men. A large number of forces on the human side joined the war. At the same time, a desolate and ancient horn sound came from the sky, and an angel with 8 wings pushed open the door of heaven and slowly descended into the world. In his hand, he held a golden horn, which was the famous horn of destruction in the Bible. Whenever this horn was blown, the earth would usher in mass destruction. Now, the horn had been taken out again. Seeing the chaos in the whole world and the attacks of angels everywhere, Yi-Bai and Hela frowned. Especially when Hela learned that Asgard was actually invaded by angels, her beautiful eyes were full of killing intent. It seems that the god of heaven has no mercy. He is a war lunatic, even more arrogant than Odin. Hela said coldly, despising the god of heaven very much. If you didn't believe in God, you would be destroyed. Even Asgard had not done such an overbearing thing. And nobody knew where the god of heaven came from. He described the destruction of the world as purification. Since you like purification so much, it's not too much for me to purify heaven. Hela, lead the way. Let's go to heaven and make a big mess. Yi-Bai said to Hela, he didn't plan to wait and see anymore. Bullshit heaven and God, Yi-Bai would not let them go just because they invaded Asgard. Although Yi-Bai didn't like Asgard very much, who made his wife the queen of Asgard? He would let Hela pay for it later. Anyway, Yi-Bai was also very annoyed with heaven. Since it was an annoyance, it was enough to eliminate it. Hela's answer was also very simple. She took out the space gem and directly opened a space channel to heaven. Without hesitation, the two walked into it together. After stepping out of the passage, Yi-Bai and Hela had already arrived in heaven, the 10th realm outside the 9 realms. There was one thing that had to be said, the view of heaven was still very good. Everywhere was poetic and picturesque, and the smell of holiness spread all over the world. Countless angels were flying in this kingdom of heaven, which looked like a fairyland compared to earth. In the center of heaven, there was a tall city, which was the city of God and God's residence. The sudden appearance of Hela soon attracted the attention of the angels. One by one, the angels flew over and surrounded Yi-Bai and Hela, both in the center. Asgardian, the sinner who dares to set foot on the land of the Lord, you deserve to go to hell. Heaven will not tolerate blasphemy by sinners, and you will be punished by the Lord. Burn them and punish them for their sins. Angels were no longer as good as they looked at the beginning, and all of them became murderous. It was as if Yi-Bai and Hela had already committed an unforgivable sin when they came to heaven. Moreover, these angels were not just talking, but really taking action. One by one, the angels flew towards Yi-Bai and Hela with various weapons in their hands. Looking at this situation, it was clear that they wanted to tear Yi-Bai and Hela into pieces. But what greeted these angels was a sword of the night sky with the aura of death. Countless swords of the night sky, created by Hela, flew towards the angels. And they pierced through the body of each angel, killing them instantly. From the beginning of the fight between the two sides, Hela brought huge damage to the angels. Countless angels were pierced by the sword of the night sky and then fell helplessly from the air. The originally peaceful heaven was now stained with blood. At the same time, the commotion made by Hela also attracted the attention of those powerful angels in the city of God. As one of the 4 archangels, the angel of judgment Uriel was the first to discover Hela and Yi-Bai. At the order of God, the angel of judgment Uriel took the elite of his men and flew towards Yi-Bai and Hela. He wanted to capture these 2 sinners who dared to intrude into heaven and then give them the cruelest judgment. This was the only way to calm the anger within him. The angel Uriel was both an angel of judgment and an angel of anger. In the records of the Bible, he was also an angel who ruled hell. At the same time, a small white card also appeared in Yi-Bai's hand when Hela was killing angels. This small card looked unattractive and didn't have the slightest threat, but it was a killer card that Yi-Bai got from the system check-in. Episode 109, Terrifying 2-Dimensional Reduction Card. Killing the God after cutting his roots. Part 1, the thin white card looked like an ordinary greeting card. But this card had a very terrifying name, 2-Dimensional Reduction Card. Originally, Yi-Bai thought this thing shouldn't be used, but he didn't expect it would come in handy in just a few days. Looking at those angels rushing towards him, Yi-Bai's eyes turned cold, and he slowly threw the small white card in his hand. Since they had to, then let's do it a little more ruthlessly, and cut the roots to avoid trouble in the future. Sadly, those angels didn't know that this little card which seemed harmless to them was actually a god of death hiding under the ordinary appearance. What is this? The angel of judgment Uriel, who had just arrived at the battlefield, looked at the small white card flying over with some confusion. A surrender letter? But there's not a word on the white card. Moreover, who would accept your surrender? Only judgment can redeem your sins. Therefore, the angel of judgment Uriel didn't care about the 2-dimensional reduction card that flew over at all. Instead, he casually took a holy flame and planned to burn this little card. But the next scene made the angel of judgment Uriel a little uneasy. Because the holy flame he released did not burn the 2-dimensional reduction card. Instead, it passed through it as if the small card did not exist at all. What the hell is going on here? Angel of Judgment Uriel was a little surprised. He stared at the still wandering two-dimensional reduction card. But then, something happened which made Uriel, the Angel of Judgment, horrified. An angel flew next to the two-dimensional reduction card, then slashed down at the small white card with his sword. But the sword also passed through the middle of the two-dimensional reduction card and could not damage the small card at all. This card is not in this dimension. The Angel of Judgment, Uriel, understood that this card was simply in a different dimension from himself and the others. At the same time, the energy wrapped around the two-dimensional reduction card began to weaken, and the god of death hidden in the small white card was about to break free from the cage. Run. Don't go near that little card. The Angel of Judgment, Uriel, realized the seriousness of the matter and quickly reminded the surrounding angels. Because of anxiety, the Angel of Judgment's majestic face was full of panic at this moment. But it was too late. The next second, the energy around the two-dimensional reduction card dissipated completely, and the terrible god of death showed his true face in front of many angels. The unlucky angel who was closest to the two-dimensional reduction card had already started to retreat as soon as he heard the warning from the Angel of Judgment Uriel. But unfortunately, his speed was still too slow. Two-dimensional reduction card was a very terrible weapon which could transform the three-dimensional world into a two-dimensional world and cause dimensional reduction. The most terrifying thing was that this fall from a three-dimensional world to two-dimensional world was irreversible. In other words, once the two-dimensional reduction card unfolded, it would continuously compress the surrounding three-dimensional world into 2 dimensions. This dimensional reduction would continue to happen until the whole three-dimensional world was dimensionally reduced. And the unlucky angel, after flying some distance away, was caught up by the two-dimensional reduction of the two-dimensional reduction card. Then, under the gaze of many angels, he changed from a three-dimensional being to a two-dimensional being, and was completely photographed to death. The Angel of Judgment, Uriel, could even see the fear in the eyes of this unlucky angel. This strange scene also made the Angel of Judgment, Uriel, sweat. The process of three-dimensional creatures falling down to 2 dimensions was very cruel. In short, it meant being flattened. It was like a person being run over by a roller. From a person with length, width and height to a painting with only length and width, as he had completely lost his thickness. The two-dimensional reduction method of the two-dimensional reduction card was actually an extremely domineering roller, and all three-dimensional things were angels who were about to be run over by the roller. One could imagine how painful this process would be. Not only that unlucky angel, but also the whole heaven was being crushed by the overbearing road roller that was the two-dimensional reduction card. Everything would be flattened, and all thickness would be lost. In the eyes of Yi Bai and Hela, those places that had been hit by dimensionality reduction and fell into 2 dimensions had turned into giant paintings. A giant painting that was infinitely large, but always 0 in thickness. The fear of that unlucky angel would be fixed in the painting forever. He had turned from a living angel to a paperman who had lost its thickness. Run quickly. Don't look back. Uriel, the Angel of Judgment, was scared to death. He reminded the angels and ran frantically in the opposite direction. However, the spread speed of the two-dimensional reduction card's dimensionality reduction blow was the speed of light. Everything that could not transcend the speed of light would be ruthlessly run over by the two-dimensional reduction card and photographed to death in the giant painting, becoming an eternal paperman. Accompanied by screams, angels were caught up by the dimensionality reduction blow of two-dimensional reduction card one by one. Then they were photographed to death one by one, and the scene before death was frozen forever, becoming part of the giant painting, Heaven. In a very short time after the two-dimensional reduction card was used, less than half of Heaven was completely occupied and turned into a painting. This weapon, it's terrifying. Being flattened alive into a sheet of paper of 0 thickness. Is there more? Looking at the spectacular scene in front of her, Hela sighed. Then the conversation took a turn, and she looked at Yi Bai with bright eyes. Obviously she was very interested in two-dimensional reduction card. I only have just this one, there's no more. I'll give it to you next time I have it. Yi Bai replied plainly, not even asking why Hela wanted it. If his wife wanted something, he would give it to her. It was very simple. Unfortunately, he really didn't have any more. He only got one two-dimensional reduction card, and he used it directly. Hela heard Yi Bai say no, although she was sorry, but she didn't say much. Originally, she was thinking that if there was any civilization that was very unpleasant in the future, she would just throw a two-dimensional reduction card. When Yi Bai and Hela were talking and laughing, the two-dimensional reduction card's dimensionality reduction also spread towards them. Two-dimensional reduction card would not show mercy to Yi Bai's subordinates just because Yi Bai used it. However, for those angels, the dimensionality reduction blow of two-dimensional reduction card was irresistible. But for Yi Bai and Hela, this dimensionality reduction blow was nothing. There was no need for Yi Bai to take action. Hela calmly took out the space gem and held it in his hand and then let the two-dimensional reduction card's dimensionality reduction blow hit her. However, the undefeatable dimensionality reduction attack failed. Hela, who controlled the space gem, completely ignored this dimension reduction attack. She was immune to the influence of two-dimensional reduction card. In fact, many strong people in Marvel could ignore this dimensionality reduction attack. Yi Bai even remembered that one of the 5 great gods could control 10 dimensions. The two-dimensional reduction card could only make the 3-dimensional world fall into a 2-dimensional world. Compared with manipulating 10 dimensions, the gap was still far away. Not to mention in the late Marvel world, the universe was restarted at every turn. Compared with that kind of big scene, the two-dimensional reduction card was really just a small thing. However, for Uriel, and for the angels in heaven, this small thing was the incomprehensible god of death. Episode 110, Terrifying Two-Dimensional Reduction Card. Killing the god after cutting his roots. Part 2, the angel of judgment Uriel was finally caught up by the dimensionality reduction blow of two-dimensional reduction card. His speed was very fast, but he had not yet reached the speed of light, so he could not escape the range of dimensionality reduction strikes. No. My lord, save me. Before being crushed by dimension reduction, Uriel, the angel of judgment, opened his mouth in fear and said to the city of God. He hoped that his almighty lord could save his life. Unfortunately, God did not respond to him. So with extreme fear and unwillingness, angel of judgment Uriel, one of the 4 archangels, was directly hit by the dimension reduction. He was run over by the two-dimensional reduction card roller and pressed into a piece of paper with 0 thickness in extreme pain. What about the angel of judgment? Under the attack of dimensionality reduction, he was still turned into 2 dimensions. He was pressed to death in the giant painting Heaven, and his expression before his death was fixed for eternity. At the same time, inside the largest building in the city of God, God also slowly rose from his throne and stepped towards the outside of the church. And behind him, a group of angels followed. Looking at the two-dimensional giant painting called Heaven slowly unfolding outside the city of God, God was very angry. Heaven was his foundation, and the angels were his servants. But at this moment, his foundation and servants had become pieces of paper with 0 thickness. My lord, what shall we do? Beside God, Raphael, one of the 4 archangels, asked God. Raphael's heart trembled with the dimensionality-reducing roller's blows, and she knew in her heart that she could not withstand this terrible dimensionality-reducing roller's blow. However, she did not run away. She believed that the great God could solve all this. God looked at Raphael with pity in his eyes. My servant, I will remember your name. After I rebuild heaven, I will continue your glory. God said compassionately, like a scum man who said that he would be responsible after having an affair. Raphael's face turned pale. She had heard what God meant. She was abandoned, and God did not intend to save her at all. She wanted to say more. She wanted to beg God to save his servant, but there was no chance. The dimensionality-reducing roller's blow hit her. Raphael's exquisite face and body were flattened and the thickness was erased. From now on, there would be no more Raphael, only a desperate angel who was slapped to death in a painting. As for God, his whole body was full of holy brilliance, and he blocked the attack of this terrifying two-dimensional reduction card. But this was also the limit of what he could do. He could keep himself safe, but he could do nothing about dimensionality reduction. Otherwise, he would not have abandoned heaven and his own servants and watched them die. Soon, the whole heaven was completely turned into a painting right in front of God. God shook his head with some pity in his eyes. These were his foundation and servants. Fortunately, Gabriel and Michael had led some angels to leave heaven ahead of time, and some of his inheritance was preserved. Later, depending on the situation, he could just choose a place from the 9 realms and re-establish heaven. God, who thought of this, was ready to leave to rejoin his servants. But he obviously forgot one thing, the one who survived the dimensionality-reducing roller's blow in heaven. He was not the only one. When the whole heaven was flattened into a picture, the existence of God, which had not been hit by dimensionality reduction, was very conspicuous. So Yi Bai and Hela soon appeared in front of God. Seeing Yi Bai and Hela, who suddenly appeared in front of him, God was also very surprised and angry. He was surprised because God felt that Yi Bai and Hela couldn't survive such a terrifying two-dimensional reduction. The anger was because the couple had completely destroyed his heaven. All the angels were almost driven to extinction, and the foundation of heaven was completely shaken. Damn sinners, you need to go to the deepest hell for your sins. No, there is no room for you in hell, you should be banished to endless nothingness and suffer in eternal cold despair. You will bear my wrath, and no one will be able to save you. God angrily said to Yi Bai and Hela. At this moment, he who usually looked calm was like an enraged hooligan. It was also normal. No matter how good God's temperament was, obviously he would be very furious at this moment. Because his home was raided and it was completely destroyed. However, both Yibai and Hela just looked at him coldly, as if they were watching a clown. In fact, God was indeed a clown in Yibai's eyes. God was also deeply irritated by the eyes of Yibai and Hela. It had been a long time since someone dared to look at him with such eyes. Well, he was going to execute these two sinners himself. Thinking of this, God no longer hesitated. His body burst into an endless divine light and he released a powerful aura. Although God was very arrogant, it had to be admitted that he had the capital to be arrogant. His strength was very strong, giving Yibai the feeling that he was stronger than even Odin. Such a character could almost walk sideways across the 9 realms. It was no wonder that Heaven's acting style was so domineering. They had always been like this. The world was like their pasture, and humans were like their lambs. As long as those lambs did not believe in themselves, kill them and replace them with obedient ones. Wasn't that how the great flood recorded in the Bible came? It was also because Heaven acted too arrogant and domineering, which was why Odin could not stand it anymore and chose to expel Heaven from the world tree and sealed it up. It was precisely because of those things that Heaven had done on the earth before that Yibai was unhappy, and he went to the door to destroy it himself. God says, "You are guilty and deserve to die." God still had an arrogant expression and a tone that was also full of arrogance. As his voice fell, a terrifying beam of light came from behind him and attacked Yibai and Hela. Such an attack was enough to easily smash a planet. Unfortunately, the opponents he met this time were 2 outright monsters. Yibai didn't even bother to continue entanglement with God, because he was irritated when he saw this disgusting face. He felt that it was better to kill this kind of guy directly. So Yibai also stretched out his hand and launched a cosmic ray in the direction of God. This was a trick Yibai learned from Galactus, and even Galactus himself couldn't resist it. Faced with an attack that could threaten even one of the 5 great gods, God had no possibility of resisting, and was directly killed by this cosmic ray. The body, which was said to be indestructible, also disintegrated into nothingness under the cosmic rays at this time. So far, the heaven, which thought that it could overlook the world from high above, was completely wiped out by Yibai. Yibai and Hela didn't plan to stay here for a long time. They turned around and opened a space channel to leave.